All right, so this is going to be a very short supplementary lecture on international business, looking specifically at a couple of frameworks developed by a British economist called John Dunning that are very influential and very useful, and I'm going to include questions on these two concepts or frameworks in the final exam. So please make sure you understand them and know them. The first one is called the OLI model, or sometimes it's called the eclectic model. So be aware of that. It's OLI or eclectic model. Dunning was an economist, and so his model was considered eclectic by other economists because he drew on disciplines outside of economics to answer the question of when will firms make foreign direct investment. And it's called the OLI model because he says firms will make foreign direct investment when they have ownership advantages, when the host country has location advantages, and when there are internalization advantages to doing the activity in the firm. So I'll touch on those briefly. Ownership advantages are our resources and capabilities that we've been talking about. And so the idea here is that, well, a firm will make foreign direct investment. First thing is it has to have some kind of competitive advantage or resources and capabilities that it wants to exploit in a foreign country. If it doesn't have those, well, it's got nothing on which to base an international expansion. So there's some group of resources and capabilities the firm wants to exploit abroad. Where the firm, and well, again, so it's all well and good for there to be resources and capabilities, but there has to be location advantages. So there has to be not just the push factor, if you like, or the internal motivation of the firm, but there has to be something externally attractive in the proposed host location. Sorry, it says exploit there. Exploit, it should say. So that's the sort of why that country. What is it? What are the advantages in that location that we think we can profitably exploit using our resources and capabilities? And then finally, and probably the most important, because these first two things, ownership advantages and location advantages, might make us go international, but not necessarily make us make foreign direct investment. Remember, foreign direct investment isn't exporting. Exporting is we have our products in America, we ship them somewhere else. We don't make any foreign direct investment. We make foreign direct investment when we invest in assets and hire people in a host market. And the first two, well, we might just export based on ownership advantages and location advantages. So there also has to be internalization advantages. And the key here is that there has to be an inefficient market or some kind of transaction costs or something that makes us want to do the activity inside the firm rather than just through a contract, export, etc. Right? Apple does not actually hasn't internalized its manufacturing that it does at Foxconn. It's outsourced its activities to Foxconn. Apple has decided not to internalize those activities. They've outsourced them. Outsourcing is the opposite of internalization. So there has to be a reason to do it inside the firm, and usually it's because there's an inefficient market. And an inefficient market means there's transaction costs. So when do we internalize an activity? Well, we internalize an activity and decide to use foreign direct investment if the transaction costs of doing that activity in the market exceed the costs of doing it inside the firm, right? There are costs to doing things inside the firm. We lose the high-powered incentives that we would have from the competition of the market, but we avoid the transaction costs, maybe of if there's a monopoly, or if there's what we call asymmetric information, or search costs, or other types of transaction costs. I think I've posted those videos on transaction costs, but if I haven't, I will. So we only make foreign direct investment when we have ownership advantages we want to exploit. The host country has location advantages that we also want to exploit, and there are internalization advantages that motivate us to do the transaction inside the firm rather than outsourcing it to someone in that host country. right? We could, if we wanted to sell our product in a host country, we don't necessarily have to open up a sales or retail sales operation via FDI. We could do it through an agency agreement. If we wanted to manufacture something in the host country, we could just outsource it and pay someone else to do the manufacturing. There needs to be some kind of rationale for doing it inside the firm. So Dunning's OLI framework tells us when a firm will make foreign direct investment if it passes those three conditions are present: ownership advantages, location advantages, internalization advantages. Dunning's 4 motivations for FDI tell us why a firm makes foreign direct investment, and he gives 4 reasons. I'm going to start with number 4 because it's the most obvious: market seeking. Our market is mature or saturated, and we need to go find some more customers, or there's an attractive market. So we expand, we make foreign direct investment in another country to be close to customers and attract more customers. Resource seeking is maybe the second most obvious. We're an oil and gas company, and we've exploited all the oil and gas in our home market, so we go to a host market where there's more oil and gas that we can exploit. Efficiency seeking. This has to do with just finding the lowest cost, locating activities in the lowest cost areas, like we looked at with Apple in the previous lecture. Maybe the cheapest place to obtain or to have our products assembled is Taiwan, so we locate that there. Maybe the cheapest place to get sensors is, who knows, Korea, so we do that there. I suppose Apple doesn't actually use foreign direct investment, but if we thought about it, if we pretended that Apple had internalized all those activities in its value chain, then we would assume that each of those locations of the value chain, primarily if they weren't market seeking or resource seeking, were efficiency seeking. Where can we conduct this activity the most cheaply? Even in the USA, there's a lot of manufacturing starting to come down to the south because it's more favorable in terms of tax regimes. The cost of living is lower, which means you can pay your workers less and reduce your labor costs. So even American firms are locating manufacturing in the Sun Belt down here in the southern states as part of an efficiency-seeking drive. Strategic asset seeking he added later, and it's kind of a more interesting one because it was realized that some firms make FDI not for any of those other 3 reasons, but to acquire new capabilities. So let's say that a big American company wanted to learn how to make chips, to actually manufacture chips. Well, they might go to Taiwan and just either do a greenfield investment. So foreign direct investment can take 2 forms. Greenfield, where you just start from scratch and build your own factory or your own retail network, or it can be a merger and acquisition. You go and buy a company that's already in that line of business in the host market. If a firm wanted to get good at manufacturing chips, they wanted to learn how to do that, maybe they'd buy a chip fab in Taiwan or in Korea. If a firm wanted to learn how to do AI, right? Microsoft, they bought OpenAI, or a stake in it, which was in the same country. But let's say that a Korean firm wanted to learn how to build large language models. Maybe they'd buy a tech startup in the USA, not because not because they already knew how to do it and wanted to attract customers, but because they wanted to learn how to do it. And that's why there's strategic assets. We're making FDI to go and buy resources and capabilities, or buy a company or set up a greenfield operation that will help us acquire those in some ways. So that's, even though it's number 3 there, conceptually, I suppose it was added last. These are in no particular order, as you can tell. So be aware of these 4 motivations for FDI. Because he will be on the test as well. Understand the OLI model. These aren't difficult concepts, but they're useful and they're widely known when thinking about and talking about international business, and they're not in the textbook, but I think they're good, easy to understand frameworks that I want you guys to be familiar with, so I will test on them. All right, any questions about this, of course, reach out, office hours, you guys have my contact details, always happy to elaborate further. Have a good one.